from the Missouri Athletic Club in downtown St. Louis. Welcome to the 2026 St. Louis Blues Hall of Fame Induction Ceremony, presented by First Community. Now, please welcome to the stage, Blues Hall of Famer, Bernie Federko.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2026 Blues Hall of Fame Induction Dinner. This evening has become one of the most anticipated nights of the season, and I'm honored to kick it off tonight. I'd like to welcome everyone in this room and all those Blues fans that are watching at home. First, I would like to acknowledge all the people that make this event so special for our organization. Our Blues staff, who have made this a blue ribbon event every year, and to Chip Mish and your staff at the MAC, you always make it so easy and first class for all of us. When I first joined the Blues organization back in 1976, I learned from day one that the St. Louis Blues are a family. It's an honor to be a part of this organization and this city. That message was instilled by the grace that we've honored on this very stage. The Blues have given me and my family so much. The lessons I've learned over my career were passed on to me by the men before me, and hopefully I've helped pass them on to our current players that are here with us tonight. We are honoring 4 men tonight who taught and showed what it means to be a St. Louis Blues. Kelly Chase. Chaser has bled blue as deeply as anyone in our history for almost 4 decades on and off the ice. His battles with some of the NHL's toughest, and his work as a radio analyst and a contributor to the community define what the True Blue Award is all about. Chaser, we know you're going through a battle right now, but we have no doubt that you will take care of this with the same determination and fight as if you were battling against Probert or Kocher or many of the others that you fought. Arbour, our first captain, a man responsible for developing the identity of the Blues, that hard-nosed, blue-collar style that so perfectly mirrored the attitude of our city. He led us to 3 consecutive appearances in the Stanley Cup Final. Barret Jackman, our first and only Rookie of the Year winner, a fearless defender whose toughness and determination led him to dress in more than 800 games as a Blue and score some of the most memorable playoff goals. I remember those, Jacks. Barret Jackman. Alexander Steen, a leader that helped us win our first Stanley Cup. From games to goals to points, he figures prominently on our franchise list and is poised to guide us into the future as our next general manager. Tonight is going to be another great night in Blues history as we honor these men. But before I go, I would be remiss if I didn't recognize the very first St. Louis Blue, the man who wore number 1 and carried the St. Louis Blues on his back. Late last week, we lost Mr. Goalie, Glenn Hall. We are blessed and privileged to follow in Mr. Hall's footsteps, a man that always held a special place in his heart for the St. Louis Blues. Let's all raise a glass and toast to the true original Blue, Glenn Hall. May he rest in peace. So thank you all, and let's have a great night of stories and memories, and let's go Blues. Cheers, everybody.
Since its inception, the Blues Hall of Fame has grown to include 20 members of the franchise's remarkable history. Pioneering owners.
I just think the greatest name in the world, we'll just call them the St. Louis Blues.
Nostalgic voices. Legendary coaches and unforgettable players. In 2026, we're proud to enshrine the fourth class, a group of men that brought the identity of the franchise to life each and every night. Once again, it's time to pay tribute to those that formed our foundation and captivated our spirit. Al Arbour, the first captain in Blues history and a two-time head coach. Arbour was a respected leader whose blue-collar, relentless style defined the franchise in its earliest years. Barret Jackman, a tough throwback defenseman that became the first player in Blues history to win Rookie of the Year. He played with an attitude and edge deserving of the number 5 he proudly wore in honor of the great Bobby Plager. Steen, a team-first forward that recorded nearly 500 points in the Blue Note. His commitment to the team and selfless character were instrumental in bringing St. Louis its first Stanley Cup championship. It's time to expand the hallowed halls of this exclusive club. Welcome the fourth class of the Blues Hall of Fame. Now, please welcome to the stage, Chris Kerber and Joey Vitale.
Good evening, everybody. How are you? And welcome to, as Bernie said, the fourth ceremonies for the St. Louis Blues Hall of Fame. There is something amazingly special, not just about this franchise and its history, but when you see the history really come to life. And we get to relive history here tonight in that way. But when you see just the jackets of the current Blues Hall of Famers that are here, Wayne Babbage coming back, Gary Younger and all the others, and the ceremonies that we had last year, and how the smiles of Curtis Joseph, seeing that old mask again, and the special moments that those were. It was really, this is one of the great sports nights of the year, not just in the St. Louis Blues franchise, but really one of the true great nights in St. Louis sports. So welcome everybody to what we hope is going to be a very fun and entertaining night. And Joe, as a young man that grew up in St. Louis, that found his way to the National Hockey League, that now works for the St. Louis Blues, you know what the history of this franchise means.
Yeah, well, you know, Curbs, I never played for the Blues. Thanks, Army, wherever you are out there, unfortunately. But, you know, I remember as a kid, I may have not worn that logo on the National Hockey League level, but I was Brett Hall in the streets in Sunset Hills. And I think a lot of guys out there know exactly what I'm talking about. Cam, I see you nodding. When he wore that, or he started using that double-piece, two-piece Easton composite, I was the first one at Johnny Mac's. There was a line out the door down Watson Road because everyone wanted to be him. You know, and then I put on that blue logo for the Amateur Blues. And I remember Cam Jansen was my teammate. Paulie, you were just a year after me. And I remember Cam, he wanted to be Kelly Chase. And I remember you dumping the puck in, the right side, hard rim, and then he would wind it up on the left side. He put about 3 or 4 guys on stretchers that year. Now keep in mind, we were 10 years old at the time. And hitting was completely illegal. But I say that because, you know, we were kids, but we felt like we were a part of the Blues. And that's what's so special about the St. Louis Blues organization, is that everyone's got the memories. It is just embedded in the fabric of the city, and we truly feel like it's all ours.
Well, and we have some introductions to make for you here and a couple of thank yous before we get going. First and foremost, we want to, here sitting right in the middle of the room, Glenn Barks and the great folks there at First Community. Their commitment, not only to the St. Louis community, which is what makes their tie-in to the St. Louis Blues so good, but their commitment to youth hockey and making sure that it continues to grow with his grandkids that are playing, and then their commitment to the Hall of Fame as well. Glenn, thank you very much for your continued partnership and playing a big role in this special organization.
It's also really important that we welcome the families of past Hall of Famers. So maybe a quick round of applause as we name off, starting with Patty Solomon. Patty. Judy and Corey Roberts. Bobby's daughter, of course, Melissa Plager, who's here. We have Jack and Jameson, Barkley's grandkids, right next door. Diana Gassoff. and Bobby Gassoff Jr.
And we also want to welcome, of course, Tom Stillman and the St. Louis Blues Ownership Group, President of Hockey Operations and General Manager Doug Armstrong, Blues Team President Chris Zimmerman. And again, this is what just gives you so much pride to be a part of this organization, is it's all about what's on the ice, but they understand what's off. But Jim Montgomery and his entire coaching staff is here tonight, guys. Thank you for coming. And some of you may know this, some of you may not, but the Blues Alumni Group is the absolute best around the National Hockey League. How do we know? Nights like tonight. When I tell you that we have over 55 current and former St. Louis Blues here tonight, that tells you how important it is. That's amazing. So thank you all for being here tonight as well. When you look around the room and you see, while we honor one number 39, you see a former 39 in Doug Waite that made his way back. Or Hall of Famer Peter Stastny, that's here tonight as well. And then, of course, recently retired, TJ Oshie coming back. It's his second Blues Hall of Fame dinner, right? Amongst all the other Hall of Blues members that are here tonight, you helped build this organization for all of us, and we love cheering you on the ice, and we're thrilled to be here with you tonight.
All right, without further ado, let's turn our heads to the screens. It is time to start the night and honor our first inductee.
Al Arbour was an original Blue and the first captain in franchise history. He led the team to the Stanley Cup final in each of its first 3 seasons and was an NHL All-Star in 1969. Following his playing career, Arbour transitioned to the Blues bench, where he served as head coach for parts of 3 seasons and guided the team to the NHL semifinals in 1972. A pioneer that set the standard for the franchise in its earliest days and helped define the hard-nosed blue-collar identity that remains the model for Blues hockey to this day. The Blues are proud to induct number 3, Al Arbour.
Please welcome up to the stage Blues Hall of Famers Gary Unger and Red Berenson.
Gary and Red, we see the highlights, and you look at a lot of different generations that are here. I do want to ask you both, but for all of us, it's just the highlights. It's just the Stanley Cup trophies. It's in the Hall of Fame, whatever it is. But let's just hear it from you. Red, we'll start with you, and then Gary. But who was Al Arbour?
Well, Al Arbour, when he got to St. Louis, was already a journeyman player. I don't remember how old he was, but he had to be at least 30, and that was old in those days. And Al had played on several Stanley Cup teams, and not just one that won a Stanley Cup, but then another one, and then another one. And Doug, you may know better how many teams he played on that won the Stanley Cup, but it was like he was a glue type of player. He didn't lead the team in scoring. He wasn't an all-star, but he was a player that made the team better. And he helped the young guys play the right way. And so when I got here, I was, I was 27, I think, or 26. And I'd played against Al in the NHL and in the American League. And he wore glasses, no helmet. And it was unheard of. And yet he was a defensive defenseman. And we saw right away, it wasn't what he said, it was what he did and how he did it. And when we were playing Chicago, for example, and Al was a left-handed right defenseman. And that meant he played against the top left wings in the NHL in those days, like Frank Mahovlich and Bobby Hull. And Hull in particular, who shot the puck better than anybody. This is just at the beginning of the the curved sticks, and still using wooden sticks, but they could jump. The puck would literally jump up or down, and you goalies out there know what I mean. But anyway, Hull would come down, and Scotty Bowman had Al Arbour on the ice whenever Hull was on the ice. And Hull would come down, and he knew he couldn't get around Al, even though Al couldn't skate that well, but he knew where you were going, and he would get it. If he got a stick on you, you broke stride and you were done. So Hull knew, and he would come down and he would wind up and he would just try and shoot it through Al Arbour, and hoping that Al would get out of the way. And Glenn Hall was in net, you know, without a face mask, and he's standing there waiting for this bullet. If it gets past Al Arbour, hopefully it won't get past him. And Al would go down and he would block that shot. Here he was with glasses, no helmet. He's blocking a shot from about 6 feet away that could kill you if it hits you in the wrong spot. And so in between periods, I went back in the medical room to see how Al was doing. They had him on the table and they had his shin pad off and cleaned up all the blood and stitched him up. And then they put some cotton batting on like that was going to make it better. And they put the shin pad back on, and we get out in the ice, and wouldn't you know, Hull's coming down the left side, and now he's gonna beat Arbour. He knows Arbour's gonna get out of the way. No chance. Al Arbour goes down, blocks the shot, and never says a word, and our team just, holy shit. And that made us a better team. And pretty soon, Barclay Plager was blocking shots, and Bob Plager was blocking shots. And our defense, we took on a defensive posture, and Scotty Bowman was preaching it all the time, and so was Glenn Hall. We can't score enough. We have to check to win. And that started with Al Arbour. And Al Arbour wasn't an overly physical player, but he was a smart player. He was a team player. He was like a coach on the ice, and of course he became a great coach. But that's a long answer to a short question.
For those that were here and remembered how long Scotty Bowman's answers were, that was actually a pretty short answer from that first ceremony that we had. Gary, what about you in that same question? Who was Al Arbour?
Well, I met Al Arbour when I was 17 years old. I was with the Toronto Maple Leafs Farm Club. Not Farm Club. I guess it was the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Farm Club's playing now, I think. But sorry, I shouldn't say that. But I was with Toronto Maple Leafs. I was a kid. And I got, after my first year of junior, I played in London. At the end of the season was over. The American League playoffs were still going on. And they sent me to Rochester. And Al Arbour was there. Al was actually my first pro roommate. The first thing I said to him is, "Can you see out of those things?" Like Red said, he's got these glasses on. He was like that, I don't know if you remember Dennis Ball. He was a scout for Detroit Red Wings that traded for me when I got traded to St. Louis from the Red Wings. And Dennis had glasses on like that. He was our head scout, and he couldn't find the bus in front of the airport when we were in New York, so it wasn't a great trade. When I met the guy, when I met the guy, he said, "Hey, Frank," I went with Frank Mahovlich and Pete Stemkowski in the trade, and I went over and I said, "Hi, Frank, how you doing? Hi, Peter, how you doing?" He came to me and he said, "Hi, Norm, how are you?" And I thought, I'm not going to play much here because he doesn't even know who I am. But anyhow, like Red said, there was so much with Al Arbour away from the game, with the young guys, being a mentor, the type of guy that he was. I was so fortunate to be able to play with original six guys like Gordie Howe and Frank Mahovlich and Al Arbour and Bill Gadsby and Bobby Baughan and play against Bobby Hull and Stan Mikita and all those kind of guys. It was really fun for me to see the different eras, the way the game had changed and how it was. my recollection of Al, he was a tough guy, but he was soft. He had a soft heart. I remember I was going through a bad streak. I hadn't scored for 3 games, and it was really serious. And I'm waiting to get called into the office. And you know, and he's banging around because we're losing a few games in a row. And that happens sometimes in hockey, and it's going to happen to everybody. So you got to get used to that. Anyhow, I'm scared to death that he's going to do something, or maybe I'm going to get traded. You always think I'm getting traded somewhere. So he calls me into the office. It's in January, and he says to me, I sit down, need to talk to you. I said, okay. He says, you know those autographed pictures you got for me at Christmas time? He says, I lost them. Could you get me some new ones? And I said, sure, Al, no problem. But then I go to the next story, and it wasn't that long ago. Not that long ago in date, but we're playing in Philly. We have a tough time playing in Philly, and we go into the Spectrum. The dressing room is way up at the top. I'm taking a face-off with Bobby Clark with a couple minutes to go in the second period. And it was before they had the marks on the ice to line the centerman up. So Bobby Clark is always cheating. So the referee is telling me that I need to get straightened around on the face-off, and I said, I'm not straightening around until he gets straightened around. And we're arguing back and forth, and while we're arguing, the referee drops the puck. Clark throws it back to their D and rips one in the top corner. So now it's 2-1. So I'm mad, and I storm off the ice. I go up the stairs. I'm sitting in the dressing room, and I was kind of in the middle of the dressing room, and I could see the front door. And I'm the only guy in there. I throw my stick down, and I'm banging around, and all of a sudden I hear this big roar. So I come flying out, and I'm looking at the ice. I think Philadelphia had not gone off, and there was a brawl going on. So I go on the ice, or I look down, and there's this guy staggering around at center ice. He's got his jacket ripped off. He's got his tie this way. He had that old gray T-shirt on underneath. He had blood all over him. And as I got down the stairs, it was Al Arbour. Al had followed with the team, had followed the referees off the end where the Zamboni was, and all the players followed him, and the cops came in with billy clubs, and they were whacking guys. And Al had a cut. I don't know how many stitches he got, but he was staggering around center ice, and the guys were fighting underneath the Zamboni. So I come flying down off there, and just as a guy was going to hit one of our guys with a billy club, I grabbed him from behind. I had him like this. And a guy from the stands, there was players from the stands, he reached down and grabbed me by the hair. We didn't wear helmets, and my hair was way too long that year. I should have had it shorter. But he grabbed me by the hair, and Bobby Plager came along and broke this guy's arm. So now this guy's going nuts, but luckily the chairs were all stuck together. These people were sitting in chairs, but the whole row of chairs were stuck together, and he's trying to lift up these chairs to throw them down on the players. And then somebody yelled, "Let's get out of here." We all ran out and went back up into the dressing room. So now we're in the dressing room, and we're saying, and they're pounding on the door to try and get us. And luckily, Mr. Solomon was there that night. So they're pounding on the door, and I'm the only guy that can really see up where the door is. So I'm sitting there, and John Arbour was one of our other big defensemen. He gets up slowly and walks up that way, and the washroom was up that way. So I'm thinking he's going to the washroom. So I'm sitting watching him there. He doesn't turn at the washroom. He goes to the door, opens the door, boom! He smokes this cop. And then he shuts the door again, locks it. I'm thinking, what's going on here? So So we were a long time in the dressing room. I think the only reason we finished the game is because Mr. Solomon was there and he was talking to the owner of the other team, and he said he was going to calm it down or whatever he was going to do. We finished the game. We won the game 3-2, and then they totally destroyed the bus after the game. But Bobby Plager, they didn't catch me, but Bobby Plager and I think Floyd Thompson and Phil Roberto and Al was an instigator because he had blood all over him. They took him in the paddy wagon and took him to jail. And Mr. Solomon bailed him out. So that's all Al Arbour.
Brad, what was it like? What was it like that year when Al started as a coach and then Scotty wanted him to play again, so then he came back to a teammate, Scotty came back down to the bench, and then that third year, and then eventually Al would take over again as coach and become one of the greatest in NHL history?
Well, I think it started by they made Scotty called me in the middle of the night and told me I was traded for Ungie to Detroit. And plus there's going to be a coaching change. Well, the coaching change wasn't going to impact me, but it was going to impact him. And so the wheels were turning, and it was a tough trade for me. And we were surprised. We were settled. I was the captain, and our team was doing pretty well. But they were after me for a couple of reasons, and the team was, or the ownership was. And part of the player association thing, we won't get into that, but it's like current day politics. And so I ended up going, and Ungie came, and it was a good trade for St. Louis. And but I kept track of St. Louis, obviously, because they were all my friends. And they were my friends until I had to play against them. And it was like playing against Pronger after you think he's your friend. And he takes your head off. But and that's the way it was for the next couple of years. But I knew, and I stayed in touch in the summertime. I'd come back to St. Louis and stayed in touch with some of the guys, even Scotty. We became somewhat friends after he had made the trade, and whether he was trying to make it up to me or not. But nevertheless, Al was the up-and-coming coach. He had gone back to play, played the rest of that year, and then he came back and started coaching again. But he was called in on Christmas Day at one point, and at this point he was doing some scouting for St. Louis, and he was called into the office, Solomon's office, and it was Christmas Day. It wasn't a popular thing, but he thought he was being fired, and he was being hired. That's when they brought him back as full-time coach, and I think it was Bill McCurry they let go that day. So those are memorable times. And but a few years later, now I'm coaching with Bark, and I'm an assistant coach. Barkley Player's the head coach, and we go into the island. And we had a coffee before the game after the game with Al. And he was complaining about Trottier and Gillies and Potvin and all these Hall of Fame players and Bossier. And Bart was so mad at him. He said, "What the hell are you complaining about? Like we've got all these young guys. We're trying to compete with a team like the Islanders who are loaded and they're on their way. We don't know that, but we can tell they were smoking everybody that came in there." And sure enough, Al went on to be a Stanley Cup coach. But the word was, there was a day and a game in his coaching career, before they ever won a Stanley Cup, where their GM, Doug, help me, who was the GM of the Islanders? Bill Torrey. And Bill Torrey was a great guy, and he loved Al. But the team and the pressure and the press and everything else was putting a lot of heat on him. And Bill he confided in some people, if Al doesn't win this game, we're going to have to let him go. And of course, they won the game, and the rest is history. That team just took off, and they beat the best teams in the league, and some exciting hockey. And Al was I think he was quieter on the ice than he was off the ice when he was coaching that team. Like he had to coach them hard at times, even though they were great players. And Billy Smith in goal, he was knocking guys down as much as Potvin was. And they were a team that knew how to play and they knew how to win. But it all started with that quiet player, Al Arbour, in the locker room.
Well, guys, thanks for coming up and share some memories as we induct Al into the St. Louis Blues Hall of Fame. It's always special to have you both back up here again. Thank you both.
Thank you for putting me at the table with all the Arbour family and Patty, and it's great to see you guys. And Al was a great friend. Forget about the hockey part of it. He was a great guy.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of his family here. I hope they get introduced. They will, I'm sure, tonight. And congrats to Barrett and Steen and these. I mean, what a class. And this is the 5th year. The other guys must have been pretty good.
Thanks very much.
Guys. Well, how about this, Joe? Why don't we welcome up 2 of his daughters, Julie and Joanne, his son Jay, to accept the crystal from Tom Still. And for Jay, Julie, Joanne, come on up. Their other daughter, Janice, the one of the 4 that was actually born here in St. Louis, was not able to make it here tonight. Joanne, just you and me talking. Nobody else is in the building. Don't worry about it. Okay? I had a chance to get to, by the way, I'm just going to tell you now, like every one of you, so they're wearing this amazing jewelry and it celebrates their dad's career, the different teams and different pieces of jewelry that their dad was given that they turned into medallions for their mom and on the bracelet as well. Some pretty cool stuff, including the ring that was given to the wives when he won the Stanley Cup with the Detroit Red Wings too. Pretty impressive. But Joanne, tell everybody the story about how you all found out that your dad had been selected by the St. Louis Blues in the expansion draft.
Well, actually, that was the summer of 1967. And my dad had told Rochester that he was going to retire, that was it, he was done. So we thought he was, we were going to go back to Canada, and that was it. So my mom and I are home. My brother and my dad were out and about. And we're listening to the radio, and they were talking about the draft, and then we hear St. Louis Blues picks up Al Arbour. My mom and I are looking, and we're like, well, how could that be? So he comes home, and then he's like, wait, what's going on here? So he finds out that Glenn Hall was also drafted. My dad and Glenn Hall were friends from junior. They had played on a number of teams together. So they call up, they're talking to each other. So my dad says, hey, are you going? So Glenn says, hey, are you going? So I'm like, I don't know. What about you? I don't know. He said, well, if you go, I'll go. I said, okay, if you go, I'll go. So they decided to go together, and there you go. We ended up in St. Louis.
How about that? If it weren't for the two of them hanging out, we might not have either had one. And then here's a piece of trivia that has absolutely nothing to do with anything other than this, other than I found out. Who was your milkman?
Saint Marseille.
They all had jobs, obviously, during the summer. Your dad was working, you said, with Molson. So at this point, Blues fans, we can now claim that if the Blues hadn't have brought Al Arbour in and continued that career, he might not have even become a coach, right?
That's right.
So there we go. You're welcome, New York Islanders. Guys, thank you very much and congratulations, and thanks for sharing those stories with us.
Well, it's time now to turn to the True Blue Award. For those who do not know, this award was created to honor those individuals whose exceptional commitment to the St. Louis Blues have made a remarkable impact on the organization and contributed to its growth and success beyond the ice. This award is, in my opinion, Curbs, maybe the greatest award I think you can receive in this organization because it surpasses what someone does beyond the job title. You know, I've always been told since I'm a young kid that this world is full of givers and it's full of takers, and this award really embodies givers, people who, of course, never ask for any recognition.
Yeah, so this is a really special day for this one as well. So before we talk about our True Blue Award winner, if I could have both Brett Hull and Curtis Joseph come on up to the stage. Grab that microphone there behind you guys there. Curtis, you had so much fun last year with this ceremony. What's it like to come back again?
Oh, it's always fun to come back and see old teammates and guys that I haven't met before, and current players, you know, the young guys.
Those great stories.
Listen, you know what I got from the stories that I just heard from Mr. Unger and Red is we were soft. Every generation gets a little softer, but we were soft compared to those guys.
Yeah, I don't think anyone ever got suckered a cop outside the dressing room.
Oh, no. Maybe Chaser.
Well, speaking of that, one guy that was not soft is the guy we're about to honor, your former teammate, hey, Brett?
Oh. You got that right. He was the toughest I've ever been around. I had a front row seat to a lot of good tilts, and I always say that he didn't win them all because he'd fight the biggest and the baddest, but I never saw him lose one. So it was, but the other part is that I saw him do so many things away from the game, and that's what this is all about, and that's why he's such a special guy.
Let's take a look at a video here.
One of the most beloved players in Blues history, Kelly Chase came to St. Louis in 1988 and immediately captured fans with his ferocious style and heavyweight bouts. Chase poured his passion into the St. Louis community, and in 1998, his charitable efforts led to him earning the NHL's King Clancy Award. From his fire on the ice, to his commitment to the community, to his memorable calls during his 18-year radio broadcasting career, Chase has always shown what it means to be a Blue. The Blues are proud to present the 2026 True Blue Award to Kelly Chase.
Well, this is the part where Joe and I are going to leave the stage and take a break for the next 20 minutes. You guys just talk. Actually, Chaser, congratulations, but it is an amazing award, as Joe mentioned, because it doesn't represent just what somebody meant to an organization on the ice. It's also what you did off the ice. And despite a spectacular career that you had on the ice, coming undrafted, fighting everybody that you could in Hartford, eventually ending away with the St. Louis Blues, it's your legacy, maybe even afterwards, enduring off the ice, that has made you such a lore in the city of St. Louis. So congratulations, bud. How are you?
I guess more humbled than anything, because you know, we get here, Twister and I, and course, he's told everybody in town we're going to beat the hell out of the town. So he kept saying "we" in the paper, and he said, came down to breakfast one morning. I said, "You got a mouse in your pocket or something?" Because Jesus, who is "we"? You keep saying we are going after this guy, and we are getting that guy. No problem for him. He was beating the hell out of everybody. I was just trying to hang in there. But Susie Matthew taught us the way to handle ourselves in the community. And I was just talking to Garth. I just said, how hard is it to be nice to people? And I can be an asshole, and everyone knows that. So, but I just don't understand, the giving back part of it. Or you're asked to sign something, or you're asked to stop and talk to somebody. It's just such an easy thing to me, and I just never really thought about it. So I got to watch Plager, and he was like a father. And I still, when I'm in the suite, I still when I hear it open, I turn around and I expect to see him, So, it's just, to me, just part of how I was raised. My mom, Joyce, is here. My sister and brother, Kyle and Candace, we were raised that way. We were just raised to do the right thing, and we don't always do it, but I think just having the right people around you and community parented, I think, is the most important thing that I've had in my life.
Curtis, Brett, when you think about the total picture that is Kelly Chase, what's the first thing that pops to mind?
Well, for me, he did all the things in the community that everybody would see, but I was this young guy that came up. We were all rookies together, me, you, Twister, Featherstone. We were all a bunch of young guys, but Chaser was a guy I looked to because I wasn't raised the way he was raised, and along the lines where you just say, your mom's here, you were raised right, you were a man before I was, and I would always look to you, and you included me in everything. Cujo, you gotta come here, you gotta do this, and everything you included me in, I was just like your little brother, and it helped my development so much knowing that I had a guy in my corner. And so in the community he was like that, but in the dressing room, for me, he was like that. He's a guy that I look to help me acclimate to the NHL world, because it's not that easy. And Chaser included all of us in everything, and he made sure that I was there. And he wasn't always a nice guy either. That's a misnomer too, because there's some mornings that if I wasn't practicing hard, he would shoot high on me. So he could be a prick too.
Well, the funny thing about it was, I was lucky enough to, because of Junior probably, that we were able to understand how to open a bank account, rent furniture, rent an apartment, and you didn't know any of that stuff. And so I was like, hey, come on, we'll get, so we end up at the same apartment buildings, and the same bank, and it just felt like guys needing help, And so it was funny, because I was reading something about in your book that you wrote, Cooge, and I mean, this fella had a tough life growing up, and I'm like, if I would have paid more attention, I would have been a hell of a lot more help to you than you thought, but
Oh, you were plenty.
I just wasn't paying attention.
You were plenty. My life kept getting better, and I always looked to you. Don't worry, I knew where you were all the time, and you helped me. Where am I going to live, Chaser? Oh, you're going to live here with us. Where am I going to play golf? Right here with us. You're going to do this. And so he really helped me make the NHL, to become a player in the NHL. So, and now when I look back on it, I never really got run over either.
Well, Twister and I, yeah, that was just part of the program. That was coming along with us either way. You weren't getting run over. And Jabber's here tonight too, and I know we were talking about that earlier, Pat Jablonski, and Jabber's like, I didn't even worry about it. We had a brawl one time, and Twister had explained in very direct terms that Pat was to be the first guy down the ice as a goalie to fight. Pat said, yes, sir, in the locker room. So Jabber was schooled early too, but no, buddy, it was just a pleasure playing with you.
Brett, what was it like watching Chaser and Twister's shenanigans from the bench all those years?
Well, it was, I guess it would be like the fight doctor, Freddie Pacheco. You know, you were right at ringside to all the big battles and the fights, and it was, you know, I was obviously not a very tough guy in that sense of the game, but there was nothing more I appreciated than what they did for us as players. And I've always said that, you know, fighting is the most honorable part of hockey, because you got two guys combating face to face, drop the gloves, and if something, say, happened, like a guy stepped on a stick and he went down, well, the fight was over. No one would ever take advantage of the other guy and keep pounding on him when something like that happened. And that was just kind of, I guess, the unwritten rule that I didn't know about, but sitting on that bench and watching is something.
As I got older, I
learned real
hit the guy
fast
when he was down. Don't kid yourself. I'd hit the guy.
Hey, I'm trying to prop you up here. But I'll tell you, you know, Curtis mentioned about how he took care of the young guys, and you know, when Twister and those guys, they came up, you know, to stay when we knew that they were going to be an integral part of our team. It was kind of like instant karma with Kelly and I, and we became extremely close friends. And it kills me now, but you talked about Susie and how she taught us what the St. Louis Blues was all about. But all of a sudden, I from out of nowhere, I became this guy and this St. Louis Blue, scoring all these goals. And it could have went a myriad of ways. But without him, he taught me how I was supposed to act, all the things we were supposed to do away from the game, the way we treated our fans and the people and the community and whatever it was. You know, he was my guiding light that way. And so I've never told him that, but I think he knows. And, you know, you asked Curtis about what you think, and when you think about Kelly Chase, and it's the love of the St. Louis Blues and the city of St. Louis, and that sums it up right there.
So, when Chaser gets dealt out of St. Louis, Brett, and this happens, watch the video screen.
Tony were going to hug out there. They're such good friends. And he's got a smile. They're bumping and shoving across the way. Puck goes out of play. And Chase now and Twist are nose to nose. I don't know if I should laugh or what. Look at this. They're nose to nose.
We have to watch the whole
now
fight.
they're going to let him go. Chase and Twist. They're going to let him go. Oh, and Kelly hits Twist with a right to the face. Now Twist hammering away his second fight of the night. As strong a fighter as Kelly Chase is, this should be no contest. They're pulling at each other's sweaters.
Shut up, Ken.
Now Twist lets go with a couple of rights. Chase has his hands full, and he is what he's always been. Very, very game.
Should have
And
jumped
Chase
on him
doing a
right
heck of
there.
a job with Tony Twist, and they're tired out, and they'll be separated. Now
That's like just two brothers fighting in the backyard right there.
There's no way, Brett, that you didn't have a rooting interest in that one.
No way. I wanted it to be a tie for sure.
You know, there was something, go back and you listen to all those.
That was completely instigated. Like, Twister will tell you this. Like, Twister was living in my house with his kids and wife at the time.
I thought he was late with the rent.
Yeah, the rent went up. The rent went up. But that asshole Keenan, like, so like, he said Twister had beat up Mark Jansen, and I wanted to show my team in Hartford, like, listen, I care about you. So and they knew Twister was living in my house, and we were best friends and grew up together. And when he came out, he said, listen, Keenan's on me. He said, you got to stop, because I was trying to get Murray Barron to fight after he beat up Mark Jansen. And he said, hey, you got to stop running around. You're getting me in it sideways with Keenan. I said, what I thought of Keenan. And then I said, when you seen when I just cross-checked Twister in the arm, I said, let's just fight and get it over with. And he looked at me, he said, what'd you say? I said, let's fight. He goes, are you serious? And I said, let's just get this over with. It was a bad decision. But I mean, him and I were brothers, and I was not worried about, we had been at it at practice in junior and in the minors and stuff, and we're both intense guys. So anyways, after the fight, I remember Jerry Clinton coming running downstairs, literally like pulling me by. He walked right in the Hartford Whaler locker room, Jerry Clinton, and because Twister and I used to go to South Broadway and box, and he pulled me. He goes, you get out here and you guys apologize to one another. He came right into Hartford's locker room. I'm like, what are we going to apologize to one another for? He's okay. We're going to dinner now. Looking at me like we're crazy. Twister standing there, what's wrong, Jerry? Apologize. And we just were like, go shower. We'll be out here in a minute and go eat. And never really bothered us. I mean, listen, I never fought for the entertainment. I fought for my teammates. I fought in the street for my friends. I fought for my sister. Not much for my brother, or I would have been really busy. But I just never thought of it that way. You know what I mean? So, look, I got all these guys. Veese is here, Jimmy Veazey, and Butchie, and Troy Volhofer I played junior with, and my Gazer crew's all here, and I got all these friends from different places, but it's always been the same. I always felt like, if you're on my team, you're on my team, and that's it.
Well, and the thing is, and I want to pull it back in away from the ice a little bit, because...
Well, this little guy, Garth Brooks, is here too, so...
Well, now when you... The True Blue Award really, as Joe said, it's as much about the understanding of the community as anything else. And so even after 18 years in the broadcast booth, which was just, awesome as all get out with you, you go on to another chapter of your life in the business world, but St. Louis was still tied in. And Joe Vitale, standing out in the crowd there. Joe, let's talk about some of that with you.
Well, we are here with a couple Garths. I appreciate you bringing that up, Chaser. We have, of course, Garth Butcher is to our right, and then Garth Brooks is to my left. First of all, Garth Brooks, what's it like being the second most famous Garth in a room for once?
Oh, Jiminy Christmas. I go by the name of Mr. Yearwood now, so I'm okay.
Garth, the one thing I wanted you to talk about, most people in this room know Kelly Chase, first of all, as the player or the competitor. You know him first as a friend. What would you want people in this room to know about Kelly Chase as a friend?
Oh, I mean, he's a love bug. I know you guys know him the other way. He's a love bug, and what I found is, if you know him now, I'm thinking that this guy is probably the strongest guy in this room from the neck up. Has probably always been that way. But I think what I love about him is he gets the big picture. We can all be in our prime, in our youth and everything, but the truth is, it's how hard we loved when this game's over. And this guy's going to be the leading scorer on that team.
Can we lastly just clear the air? Chaser's been telling everyone that you wrote the song Friends in Low Places after him. Is that true or not?
Yeah. I mean, you don't get any lower than that.
I send him a video. I send him a video every Christmas, or every 1st of July. We have a big party at Gaza, and as soon as I get, all the people are out on the lawn, and we have a big Canada Day party, and as soon as Friends in Low Places comes on, I video it, and I send it FaceTime, or I send it the video to him, and last year, he finishes the song for me, and sends back and finishes the song, and I'm like, you must be bored tonight, dude.
Well, as we roll this next, Garth, thank you very much. Thanks for being here, and welcome to the St. Louis Blues family.
Thanks, brother.
Again, the legacy is so much more than just the ice, as Brett was talking about and as Curtis Joseph was talking about. But as we look at some of these images up here on the board, we'll roll a video here. You're rolling the community and what you did from the King Clancy Award.
Yeah, I got that.
Yeah, there's no real audio on this. These are just highlights, so there's no audio on it. To really this to the Gateway Locomotives, and then from there, just.
Well, the funny thing about that award was they called my house twice, the NHL, and it was springtime, and I thought it was the league fining me, so I wouldn't take the call. And my wife, Raylan's like, she's like, get in here and take this call. And I said, nah, it's fining me for this incident in the playoffs. Anyway, I finally came in and took the call. It was Mary Pat Clark from the NHL, and I did say at the ceremony, normally when the NHL's calling me, it's Brian Burke calling me, and I can tell you the acceptance speech is a hell of a lot different than it's going to be tonight.
Why was going to the hospital with guys like you just saw Steen or you see, why was this so important to you?
I say this all the time. We have an obligation to give back when we put on a jersey. I really believe that. So when I see the guys that are in my 3 a.m. guys, I always feel like we dig in a mile wide and an inch deep. We never really follow up with that kid that was sick. We never really follow up with that kid from the Wish Foundation. So March of Dimes, whatever it is, we just go and do it because we're obligated to do this. We should do it, but then we just go on to the next thing. Sign the jersey, go on to the next thing, never pay attention. I just feel like, I just wanted to just pay attention more to some of that stuff. And here I am now, I've been 3 years with this leukemia, and I've made I would say a lot of acquaintances in the hospital, and I'm not on a floor where there's a lot of people coming out of that floor, unless they're, I hate to say it, but in a stretcher. So I just feel, I feel an obligation to just kind of do the right thing.
Last thing for you here is we move on with the ceremonies, and we're going to induct Barret, Jackman, and Alexander Steen into the Blues Hall of Fame. Two guys that I know have meant an absolute ton to you. What would you like to say to those guys?
Well, first of all, congratulations. And it takes a certain person to be a St. Louis Blue, then stick to it, and then be committed to this community. And that's why we have Stas and Joey. We have alumni that come back here, okay? Steener coming back's a big deal. Robert Bortuzzo went away and figured it out. Bort took you a year or two, but you realized just what the community meant, right? So, I don't know. I just feel like those two guys have integrity written all over them. Like Barrett's as close to Bobby as you could get, probably without the pranks. But Alex has just got great integrity, and that's why Army's put him in a position to succeed and move on in the future. So I'm just proud that I'm going in with all of them, Al included. Al Arbour was that guy and could easily be a true blue, himself. So I do some things in the community where I have some businesses going on. But by the way, we're going to Carbon after the show. Club I got in Clayton, we're gonna go there. So everybody's invited, so I expect to see y'all there. But somebody asked me, well, 10 people have asked me about the car. Where do they get tickets? The Lamborghini downstairs. I said, I'm never gonna drive that. I'm not a Lamborghini guy, but I sure wanna make sure that people get taken care of. And so if we can make money raffling this car off, let's do it. So we come up with an idea and hopefully it works, but it's just do the right thing. It's not hard. Just do the right thing. And like, first of all, I didn't know he had that emotion in him. I thought it was just bitching. And I can finish sentences for him because we roomed together for a long time. And I roomed with a suitcase. He was never in the room. In any event, these two guys here are guys like I said, 3AM guys. Tony Twist. Yeah, he's that guy. Anybody that'll come to your hospital room, strip down naked in front of the doctors, walk in, tell you he's using the shower, use the shower, pull his bed out, make his bed, and then talk to the doctors, and they're like, who the hell is this guy? I'm like, oh, that's Tony, and then he'll talk to him like a doctor because he's the only guy that's won Scholastic Player of the Year twice in a row, too, so nobody knows how brilliant he is, too, so when you have friends like that, I think you get them together, buddy, and then it just works.
From all of them, from all of us, from me personally, for 18 years with you, thank you and we love you.
I love you too. Thank you, folks.
Folks, we're going to keep this show running. That is going to be a very, very tough act to follow. Brett, I'm going to have you stay with me. Go ahead.
Yeah. Good luck to Barrett and Steen the rest of the way through.
But to help us with the next inductee, we're going to keep Brett here. We're going to welcome on the stage Al McGinnis, Chris Pronger, and Keith Kachuk. These fine gentlemen make their way to the stage, we ask you draw your attention to the side screens as we introduce our next inductee, the last Blues player to wear the number 5.
The 17th overall pick in 1999, Barrett Jackman spent 13 seasons with the Blues, a tenure matched only by Hall of Famer Bernie Federko. He began his career like no other Blue in franchise history, winning the Calder Trophy for Rookie of the Year in 2003. He ended his run with 803 games in the Blue Note, the most by a defenseman in team history. One of only 3 Blues defensemen with multiple game-winning playoff goals, the Blues are proud to induct number 5, Barret Jackman.
Barrett, congratulations. Thank you. Kind of wild when you hear somebody introduce you as the last guy to wear a number for an organization, isn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy. I just remember walking in and having that number. You know, most training camp numbers are, you know, the 80s, 90s, and you know that number 5's sitting there, and then you start to learn, you know, as you play, and you know, as training camp on what Bobby meant to the organization, and you know, I didn't take that lightly wearing that number, and you know, Bobby is the blue. You know, you don't talk about the history of the game and the history of the Blues without, you know, Bobby being part of it, and you know, didn't take it lightly. Tried to live up to the number, and you know, hopefully did that.
I specifically remember Bobby standing in the radio booth being absolutely livid that they gave the number 5 to Alexei Gusarov. And then he looked right at me. He looked right at me and he goes, "You wait till this next guy, that Barret Jackman, he's gonna get that number 5." And he did. He was so proud that you wore that number. For you personally, what has the blue note come to mean to you?
You know, it's everything. It's, you know, it kind of becomes your identity after a while. And, you know, getting drafted by the Blues and, you know, with Al and Prongs, and, you know, Walt was traded, you know, after, and then the tradition that, you grow up watching Hully and, you know, scoring goals. I couldn't do that, but, you know, I got, you know, what, 29, you got 741, so we were a little far off, but, yeah, just, you know, the first time you put on the blue note at the draft, you know, it was special. You know, you have the dreams to, you know, to play in the NHL, and once you finally do, you know, you want more, and you want more and more, and, you know, played over 800 games here, and, you know, grew up here. I basically became, you know, a man in the city, and, you know, the fans are amazing, the city's amazing, and it's a great place to raise a family.
Al, what was your first impression of Barrett when he showed up on the scene?
I didn't know you had 29 goals, did you? No. I can remember Barrett, you know, even coming into training camp in his first couple of years, and just how he carried himself, and you kind of knew he had that quiet confidence in himself, and he just mentioned it, you know, he wanted more and wanted more. And, you know, looking back on his career, his first year of pro, he goes down to Worcester as a 20-year-old to find his game. He knew his identity. And in the American League, he racks up almost close to 300 penalty minutes. As a 20-year-old in the American League, that's hard to do. And that shows you how tough he is. And I remember not long after the season ended, actually Barrett gave me a call and asked me about a personal trainer. So I hooked him up with a personal trainer. Comes in the next training camp in incredible shape and has a great training camp, and obviously off he goes. But that's the kind of, you know, he knew what he wanted. He knew his identity. He took ownership, and it's not a surprise that the career he's had.
So did you help him to the Calder Trophy, or did he help you to the...
Al says that he wanted.
I didn't think it needed to be said, but
yeah, but I really get way too much credit for this. All right, and we actually helped one another. And at first, we got a little. It was his first year. He wasn't really paying attention too much. But this guy gets hurt. Okay, he misses the season with an injury or surgery, and he was always taking the top lines. So, you know, I was getting the second tier lines, and it was a lot easier. And then once he went down, I'm thinking to myself, holy shit, this is going to be a tough task. I was getting up there in age. Long story short, you know, Barrett and I became partners. Like I said, Barrett was easy to play with. He was a predictable player. He was an underrated first passer. But you talk about grit, character, and a lot of nights we were matched up against the other team's top lines. It didn't matter who was coming down on him, who he was playing against, whether it was Patrick Kane, Naslin, you name the skill guys in the league back then, and he was just as hard on those guys as he was on their tougher guys. And what impressed me the most, it's very hard for a young player to come in and be consistent. And Barrett was consistent. He was getting better every game. And actually, that pushed me. And, you know, we became great friends, great partners. We pushed one another. We had a tremendous year. And he helped me to get the awards as much as, you know, I helped him. And rightfully so. He won his, and I didn't.
Well, Chris, I'm gonna ask you.
Hold on, he said an underrated passer. I just had to pass it 20 feet to my right, and he had the puck.
Easy game. Chris, I want to ask you something. First, for the folks who don't know this, Barrett's probably too humble to say, Ryan Reeves just took you on a father's trip out in San Jose. Ryan, of course, brought Barrett, which is a really awesome thing, by the way. Chris, why would someone do that?
Well, I think it just speaks to what he learned from Al. He then passed along to Ryan Reeves as a young player coming in here to St. Louis. I think he saw how we tried to treat the younger guys and mentor them and bring them along, much like Al did with me, and then he did to Jax, and I think he was trying to pay it forward to a younger guy on that early Blues team. And, you know, I think it just, again, speaks to the character that he has and the type of player and person he is. And you know, talking about that first year, I had a front row seat to watch every one of those games, and just to watch him continually mature and get better with each successive game. And as Al said, playing against the top lines every night, looking unfazed and just taking it all in stride. Not too many rookie defensemen are able to do that, which was pretty impressive to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I can't remember off the top of my head the other finalists, but I think it was Zetterberg. And I mean, to win that Calder trophy and was really a statement to that, because as you guys are saying, that isn't easy to do as a defenseman, to get into that mix.
Well, certainly not. And it was, I think Rick Nash was the other finalist, right?
Yeah.
And I don't give the voters much credit very often.
Not very often, no.
So anyways, I will give them credit for the award that Jackman won, because you really had to pay attention and know the game to realize the impact he had on our team. And nowadays, all of the awards are about points. And for them to recognize, you know, the way Barrett played, how tough he played, his character, how hard he played, how hard he defended, blocking shots, killing penalties, and how important it is in the league and to win games. And for them to recognize that, because usually they're, you know, at the food station or at the canteen or whatever, it's impressive that Jackman won it, and I'm not sure if another type of defenseman like that will win the Calder again. So that,
I think they saw the impact that he had on our team and what he was able to accomplish with Al. It's pretty unheard of for a defenseman to play a defensive role like that and to get that kind of recognition that early.
It is true. Walt, what was it like to bring this young man along, and then you two being a part of really what was a heck of a transition for this franchise?
Well, first of all, when I saw Jax, I was just happy somebody had shorter legs than I did. we're both known as okay, from Dougie Waite, Tommy and Timmy Torso. So. That's what I loved about him. You know what? Just like the guy said, you know what? It's incredible, a young guy, you know, walking into a locker room and being paired with Al McInnes and play with Chris Pronger. That's a lot of pressure. And this kid's demeanor, you can just tell he was raised right. I mean, Mrs. Jackman, you did a wonderful job with this young man. He is truly one of the best teammates I've ever had. It truly is. And you know, I think you can go around to everybody who's played with Barrett, who's got to know Barrett. I mean, you won't have anybody say a bad word about this kid. He brought it. He's a team-first guy. He's a leader. Even when he was early 20s, he was one of the leaders of this team. And he always had your back. You know, the only thing I didn't like about Jax is the practice. You know, you knew you were going to be in a battle. If you're going through a bad streak, Jax and I would always go one-on-one against each other, and I'm like, oh shit, here we go again. You know, this you know, he's got the two personalities. On the ice, he's a mean son of a bitch. Off the ice, he is a big teddy bear. But, you know, I hope he learned some things from me, but I learned a hell of a lot from him. And, you know, as the older we got, obviously we became great friends. And, you know, he was that guy that was the glue guy for the team with the younger guys and the older guys. And that's important to have. That can't go unnoticed. You know, the younger guys looked up to him, and truly was a very talented guy on the ice, but a better person and a better teammate. This guy is an incredible person.
You didn't come into a team.
Thanks, Keith. Thanks, Timmy Torso.
That's not easy, because from that standpoint, one thing for you is when you first got here, and then, you know, you come in, then there's eventually the lockout, the team, you know, misses the playoffs, and you become a core piece. But you had, not just like big time people around you, but like we're talking Hall of Fame, and no doubt in my mind, soon to be Hockey Hall of Fame players around you, you know, the whole way through to kind of lead you up. So to take your place in that line is impressive.
Yeah, I think it was too stupid as a young guy to realize the greatness that was around. You know, I appreciated it, and I did understand, but, you know, I heard the one phrase when I was younger, act like you've been there before. And so, you know, I try to conduct myself, you know, showing the respect to the older guys, but not being a pushover. And, but these guys were so good to me that, you know, every time I walked in the dressing room, they were making sure I was, you know, I was good. I was a young guy trying to figure out, I was 21, 20 years old. Trying to learn how to be an adult. But these guys were all amazing. You know, we go to the bar and we might be there a little bit later. But I always made sure I just sat there, I listened. I listened to the stories, just like, you sit and hear everybody in the audience. It's the stories that the older guys tell that you learn from. And so I always made sure I was the last guy there. Made sure Walt got home okay. And then, you know, but just sitting there as a young guy and appreciating the history and appreciate all of the stories was, you know.
Did a bad job at that, buddy.
So you were Uber for well before it existed, is what you're saying.
Well, you know, Barrett, we were talking about your character and, you know, taking on a dad role. I've heard from some of the younger guys in this room that's kind of made that transition when you were a little bit older. I was talking to Cam Jansen a little bit. Cam, what's a moment when you came into the league with the group you guys had that really kind of captured what he was as far as that father figure?
First off, this is very intimidating, just so everybody knows. But if you want to challenge this table to a fight, then we're doing pretty good, besides Andy. Jax, you had a lot on your plate. When I first got traded here, you had a lot on your plate, man. We had a lot of young guys, Osh, Bergie, Petro, all those guys. You did a damn good job. We needed you, man. Like, we needed you. And we looked up to you. And if we were too high, you brought us down. If we were too low, you pumped us up. You battled with us in practice. You took care of us on and off the ice. We appreciate that, man. We really, really do. Look at Osh, Stanley Cup winner. EJ, Stanley Cup winner. Petro, Stanley Cup winner. David Perron, Stanley Cup winner. That's because of you, man. That's because of your mentorship. Now, I look at myself, I'm still a disaster. So you're 5 out of 6. 5 out of 6.
You're
5 out of 6.
Progress. You're a work in progress. We're still going.
We love you, man. We needed you, and you deserve to be up there. We love you, Jax. Right on, buddy.
Thanks, Brandon.
Hey, 5 out of 6 ain't bad, Barrett.
It's a pretty good percentage, yes. I'll take it.
Al, real quick, well, actually, before I get to this nugget from Al, you know, when you first came into the league, too, there's a guy by the name of Jimmy Roberts that was running the defense. What was it like to have him back? This is a guy, again, you're coming in, but this is a guy that was voted as one of the top 100 Montreal Canadiens of all time.
Yeah, all he said to me was too slow. So, but Jimmy was amazing. You know, I still, you know, he skates some of our kids that are injured. I still use some of his bag skates where you're jumping over the boards. Go down and take a breakaway, go back, sit down on the bench, jump over, keep doing it. The kid in the back that had to do it a few times, and he hated me. But Jimmy was just awesome. Just his personality was just, he just knew how to treat people. He knew how to get the best out of you. And I was just in awe. Like, you first get here and you hear about all the cups that he's won and how good of a player. But he was an amazing coach. Joel Quinville really helped me. Mike Kitchen, just made it easy. They showed confidence in me and just pushed me in the right way.
What was it then about Ken Hitchcock that then helped that whole team and what you guys were doing find another level?
Just, he was a hockey mind. He was really good at making sure that all the players hated one person. It was normally Hitchcock. But it was, the guys just, as you start to win and you get that success, like I said earlier, you wanted more. And that's what we did as a group, just kept wanting more. And wanting that first cup. We wanted it so bad. Unfortunately, when I was here, we didn't get it. But, I feel like I was, had a little bit of a hand in Steen and all these guys that, and Bortz and all these guys that did eventually, lift the cup that I took from Al and Prongs and Big Waltz. And, you keep passing it down and hopefully it kind of sinks in.
Barrett, I know you scored so many goals in your career. It's probably hard to remember them all. But what do you remember about this one in particular?
Yeah, I had my head up the whole way, saw a hole in between the pads, and I just kind of placed it there perfectly.
Just great vision all the way, right?
Head down, close your eyes. I didn't even know it went in. My arms actually got so sore because I had them in the air in disbelief, and all the guys came up. And so, the next morning my shoulders were sore from getting mauled.
Yeah, but you know what? I know 29 regular season goals. You had the 2 playoff goals. Both were game winners. You had that one, and then you had the goal against the LA Kings.
I'm all about percentages.
I like that.
5 out of 6, 2 for 2 game winners. Just, score when it counts.
It's all about quality. Hey, Jax?
Hey, Brett, on the other end, well, first off, what'd you think of that slap shot that squeaked past the goalie there?
That was kind of a half a slapper. But
that's all I had.
He's doing what he's supposed to do, getting it on net, and it went in. That's hit the net.
I hear there's a pretty good story about how the two of you kind of really first met and became friends.
Yeah, it's a really good story, actually. And it's, you listen to Al and Prongs and Big Walt talk about the quality of teammate he was. And I was unfortunate to never get to play with Barrett. But I think I had a hand in helping him win the Calder because Zetterberg was my line mate in Detroit his first year. So I must have kept him down a little bit to help Jax. But we had a place and so we also talked about how great Barrett is as a human being, and my wife and I had a place up at Gaza Ranch, and the Hull household was not afraid to be up past curfew, and so we had a big fire pit in our back on the 12th hole, and we had the music blaring and the big French doors open and people coming and going, and Barrett and Jenny had just kind of bought up there, and from what I understand, they were having a pretty good time on their patio too, and it was, I don't think it can't be a 2-minute walk across the street over to our place. And we hadn't met the Jackmans yet, and it was my wife and some other friends sitting around and having a good time. And Jenny tells Barrett that she's like, I'm tired of it. They sound like they're having so much fun over there. I'm going to walk over there and introduce myself. And she grabbed a bottle of, which I would imagine it was probably Pearl vodka, right? The grape that she liked to drink.
Yeah, it was the cheap stuff.
Yeah. And Jenny, she came stumbling across the street and up the stairs and around the side, and she came over to the back patio, and she goes, "Hi, you guys sound like you're having fun." And we said, "Yeah, come on, sit down." And we introduced ourselves, and and I'm going to leave a little bit out that doesn't need to be told, but we had a great time, and you know, at some point we lost Jenny. And we said, well, she must have just went home, and the next day, Jenny came back over and was cleaning up the stairs for some reason. But that's the type of people they are. They just... But that's when we met Barrett and Jenny, and it's my wife Darcy and I. It's been the honor of our life to not only become great friends with Barrett and Jenny, McKenna and Caden, who will be a future NHL star, and McKenna will be a future Olympic horseback rider, we hope. And not only just them, but if you know the Jacksmans and know their friendship group, you know what kind of people they are. And we're very honored to be a part of their friendship group, and we've been friends from that day forward. And it's so well deserved of him to be here, up here on the stage, becoming a Hall of Fame Blue. And congratulations.
Thanks, buddy.
Barrett. It's a big 6'6" defenseman sitting over there that's kind of starting to breathe down your neck a little bit on that all-time games played list. But boy, when you look back and you realize that moment when you passed Bobby Plager and then added to it to have over 800 games played as a St. Louis Blue, what do you remember about that moment?
Yeah, you know, I think there was a TV crew that was following me around that day, and you know, just getting to the rink, and Bobby was the first one that was there to congratulate me, and you know, it was pretty cool. And I can't wait for Colton to pass me here. He keeps climbing up the list. He's going to hit Steen here pretty quick, and then you know, he's going to take over. And he just, you know, he proves that, you know, good people, you know, have success. And he, you know, Bobby was proud of the person that he is. He was the one that went over to Bobby's house when they had the cup, and he was the one that was, you know, his shoulders were pretty sore that day too, because you know, he followed Bobby around the whole day that he had the cup to make sure that Bobby had the experience that he deserved. So no, but you know, proud of you know, the friendship with Bobby, and you know, looking forward to what you know, Colton does in the future.
And then lastly, real quick here, how much did it mean to you that day that the organization told Bob Plager that number 5 was going to be retired?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. You know, I think Caruso was the one that called me and, you know, told me the whole plan. I was going to hide in the back room. You know, I can't remember what they told him. I think they told him it was a season ticket holder deal, and Melissa and Dave and the kids were there, and yeah, I got to take the jersey off and hand it to him, and you know, I had trouble speaking because I was so proud of him, and it's yeah, still pretty special.
Ladies and gentlemen, the last player to ever wear the number 5 for the St. Louis Blues, Barrett Jackman. Congratulations, Barrett.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, we have one more to induct tonight, and even plenty more great stories to go. And we're going to keep Barrett up here and Big Walt up here for the exact same reason. We get everybody, turn your attention to the video screen, and as we honor Alexander Steen.
Alexander Steen joined the franchise in 2008 and went on to become one of only 5 players to appear in 12 seasons with the Blues. None of those seasons was more memorable than 2019. Steen's leadership and team-first mentality played a vital role in one of the most historic comeback stories in NHL history, as the Blues recovered from last place in the standings on January 1st to deliver St. Louis its first Stanley Cup. He ranks 4th in franchise history in games played, 6th in points and assists, and 10th in goals. The Blues are proud to induct number 20, Alexander Steen.
When you look back, and I think the famous photo that everyone remembers of you is, of course, right down Main Street with the big cup over your head. But that day doesn't happen if we don't go back to November of 2008 when you got traded to the St. Louis Blues. And what do you remember about that day?
That I got pulled into the gym after practice, or out of the gym after practice, and was told to meet with the GM together with Carlo Coliaco, and I was like, this ain't good. And he told me I was going to St. Louis, and at the time we were playing divisional matchups. It was 8 games, so we were only on the west side once every 2 years. So I'd only been in St. Louis once before that, and I remember going, sitting, Googling and looking up St. Louis, and I knew I had Big Walt there, and I played with Danny Heinout before, so that was a little bit comforting knowing that you were going into a team that you knew some people, and yeah, it was best thing that ever happened to me.
What now, as you're sitting up here on stage, I always love that letter to my younger self that the Old Players Tribune would put out there. What's something you would tell today, you would tell your younger self as that trade happened to be aware of, about St. Louis and the St. Louis Blues?
Oh, that's a good question. There's a lot, but just the people that you're going to meet, I think. You know, the game has given me so much, pretty much everything I have in my life, and when I got here to St. Louis, it was just felt like such a good fit for my personality. You know, got to know the alumni and the organization very, very quickly. I think Chaser was the one who actually sent the car to grab me at the airport and bring me to Harry's, of all places. Yeah, I would say that the people, I mean, my wife and my kids here now, it's so comforting having them grow up in an environment like this, in a city like this. It's people that take care of each other here. It's very apparent, and yeah, we've really enjoyed our time. I think, you know, Chaser said it earlier here on stage. He says, when you're on my team, you're on my team. And when I got here, he was pretty quick to tell me that this city's on your team, you know.
Jax, Steener's talked about multiple times how you lift the cup in 19, but it was the decade before that, part of the era you were in, that really sunk the foundation, or really dug the roots in to preparing them for the cup in 19. What about that era of Blues hockey really set in motion that 2019 championship?
You know, just having Steener come to our team. You know, he was a little bit younger, but you could just tell the drive that he had every day. You know, he was in the gym before everybody. He was riding the bike extra. He was doing extra lifts at practice. He was pushing guys. And just the character that he brought to the team, it spread like wildfire. We weren't expected to win a lot, but we did. You know, 1-goal games. You know, I think every one of our games was 1 goal. But yeah, we knew that we were going to wear out the other team. And, you know, Steener brought that every day and showed the guys, you know, and helped me, you know, with a lot of the leadership roles. And yeah, I think it really did start with, you know, that trade that, you know, with Steener and Harry Hoppak, Koliakovo, that, you know, it was about the culture, and, you know, and he really helped drive that.
Alex, the 19 team gets the accolades that it should get. They won the Stanley Cup. But as you've talked a lot about, there was 10 really good years leading up to that, and those teams every single way helped build you, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And, you know, I've worked with Doug now since we both came here in 2008. I think, you know, he was a big part of the reason why I'm here. And told him that he had something about trying to get me to Dallas, and then he came to St. Louis and brought up the same idea here. So I'm very grateful for that. And what Doug did with the team for so long, and Mr. Stillman and the ownership group putting together a cap team year after year is something I'm extremely appreciative of. It gave us an opportunity to build what we were building over that time, and, you know, watching my father have his career for so long, and you know, not quite having that same opportunity that I did, I'm very grateful for. And you know, the people, the guys, ex-teammates, alumni, and, you know, we got 2 sitting up on stage, but we had a lot of fun building that. You know, Jance's 5 out of 6 speech is great, but Jance had me laughing pretty much every day in the room with stuff that he was saying. You know, I don't think I've seen anybody so happy when I scored a goal in the pile afterwards. You know, Bobo with his, yeah, he's got one of the best cross checks I've ever seen, where he popped 2 MCLs on the guy with 1 cross check. But yeah, we were tough. Stas and I used to sit in the saunas after game and talk about, you know, the game and what had happened, and our wives would sit in the wives' room and wait for us, and every once in a while I'd look at Stas, I go, "Your wife's here, right?" And he goes, "Nope." I go, "Oh no." Yeah, and, you know, I still remember when I first got here, a couple games in, we went on the road, and Walt came, I was sitting at the front of the bus, obviously, and Walt came down, and I'll always remember this. He's like, "Hey, kid, come sit with us in the back here for a little bit." And it was a big moment for me. Came from Toronto, where I was struggling a little bit and stumbled there, and everybody here gave me a chance and opportunity, and you know, I'll forever be grateful for that.
Walt, Steener's talked a lot about his teammates, and let's turn to you and the impact he's made on you. What's something that he's done or said to you that's helped you as a person and a player throughout your career and your life?
Well, you know, when trades happen, I think it's impacted everybody in this room who's played, you know, but that trade, you know, may have not won us that games right away, but you knew that the impact that Steen would bring to the team. He's another guy that, you know, a scout's dream, you know, a culture guy, a guy that can play in any situation. And he was taught the right way, once again, by his dad, who I got to play with. And the impact he had in the dressing room, his work ethic on and off the ice, and his ability to play any way you wanted to play. You could put him on the first line, you could put him on the second line, you could put him on the third line, and you wouldn't get a peep out of him. There was a team-first mentality. And he had sneaky skill, too. He had a hard shot. You didn't have a hard shot, but he had a hard shot. And this kid used to bring it high and hard. You know, I love the kid. But getting back to, you know, I never thought that, when I was 19 years old that I see this little 8 or 10-year-old kid that someday he's going to be my boss. I hope I was nice. I just thought of that. I'm like, holy shit, you know. I hope I was nice to that kid. But he was.
But for the people that may not know, that when you know, obviously you started your career in Winnipeg, and you're playing there, and you're playing with Alex's dad, Thomas Steen. So all of a sudden, then this trade happens, and you're going, "Wow, wait a minute, we got that kid here."
I thought, you know, I better retire soon because I'm playing with a former teammate's son. But you know, and Thomas, his dad, who I think I spent 4 years together with Thomas, and I didn't know a lot about Winnipeg, but he was a heck of a player. And this guy played through some major injuries. You know, a Swedish guy who was strong as you can possibly get, not the biggest guy. He was tough, but I think his mom was tougher, Mona. So I could see where he got his toughness from, both his mom and his dad. But yeah, it's just funny looking back. And you know, I personally, as a player, former player, I loved having kids around the rink, and I think it's important. I think it helped Alex develop into a great hockey player, but more importantly, learned a lot of great things. Probably a few bad things being around the dressing rooms, and it showed right now. He's, you know, was a great guy to play with, and like I said, you know, you can't find guys that, you know, there's always somebody pissed off, but he's a level-headed kid, wants to win, and it showed, and he's had great success, and he's got the ultimate dream, Stanley Cup here in St. Louis.
Alex, speaking of just stuff and growing, like, how big was Walter helping you guys with Andy Murray's scavenger hunt in Sweden?
Yeah, he cheated the whole way.
And we knew we weren't supposed to take transportation. Me and my group took taxis to the next destination. We're beeping the horn, giving the guys the finger and stuff. Awful, terrible.
And then they showed up a half hour later than everybody else.
I just wanted to piss Andy off for making us do a scavenger hunt.
So we go over to Sweden in 2009, and Andy Murray says, we've got a team building thing, and he sends you guys on a scavenger hunt. Then what?
Yeah, we got cameras. We were supposed to take pictures from each place we were at, and they had the pictures, but they had a bunch of other pictures too.
You guys were 3 hours late to the bar.
Yeah, well, that was it worked. It was team building.
Well, Alex, you talked about a former player that had the biggest smile on his face when you had success. And TJ Oshie, of course, is here. A round of applause for TJ. Made it in. I guess TJ, first with 4 kids at home, and must be nice to catch some sleep on this next couple days.
Yeah, well, Jack's informed me that I'm not going to be getting a lot of sleep. So, but no, it's great to be here back in St. Louis, obviously. Big place in my heart for the time I had here, and especially to those guys up on stage.
What about...
And you too, Walt, sorry. And Curbs, everyone on stage.
What about Alex as a person made you smile so big when he had success?
Yeah, I mean, it was... he was the ultimate line mate, and it goes a little bit further than teammate because you're out there together constantly, right? And when I first got here, when Andy Murray was here, Steen was on the third line, the checking line, and they played like 22 minutes a night. And, you know, just as a line standpoint, you'd see how good he was. You're like, man, this guy's like, he's a top 3 guy. And it goes to show with what Walt said as well, is that he could play up and down the lineup. And finally, Steener played with, it was me, Steener, and Bax, and we meshed. And Steener off the ice was so good at reading the room and reading guys that were either struggling and needed some help or just needed, you know, you just come over and say, hey, Osh, what's going on? And as a young, extremely immature guy, you know, that was super, super helpful to me. And on the ice, I mean, he would do everything that was necessary for our line to have success and for our team to have success. Bax would do the same thing, I would do the same thing, and it's a special thing looking at the guy next to you and knowing that he's going to do everything in his power to make you look good. And it really was, I mean, I played with some good players, right? I played with the best goal scorer of all time. No offense, Hully. and one of the best passers of all time, and the most points I've ever had in one season is playing with Steener. So it goes to show he really could do it all, and he's an even better person.
Thank you, TJ. TJ is going to be between the benches tomorrow for the Blues and Carolina game, so look for them. I don't recommend taking any advice from Chaser about preparing. My first game, I prepared, he threw all my notes away and chucked them over the upper deck, so I really had nothing, but good luck tomorrow, TJ.
Alex, as your career progressed with the St. Louis Blues, what were some moments that you can look back on that kind of eventually were stepping stones to an eventual championship?
Oh, good question. There's a lot. I mean, you look back at everything that we talked about. I think there is something to passing it down. I think it's gone in generations here in St. Louis and with the Blues organization from when the team started to where we're at now. I think that's been a big part of the fiber of this team. And, you know, Jax, for instance, was when Red and Gary were talking about Al. To me, it sounded like Jax, like, you know, stitching him up. He went right back out there. And I remember times where I was like, he's not coming back. And sure enough, he'd come back out and ready to play. Like it just felt like we were picking up stuff all along the way. Jax's toughness and it didn't give anybody an excuse to not play in the games or participate in practice. And we were competitive, and I believe anyways, we wanted to be consistent. Like, we wanted to come out and play with the same fire every night. And through all those years, obviously 19 stands out, but I'm extremely proud of our groups from all those years, at how consistent we were night in, night out in practice, and we had some fun on the side sometimes too. But yeah, extremely proud of the groups, and quite honestly is why I'm sitting up here today, so yeah.
You know, there's one gentleman in this room that has played with you, Alex, who's played against you and has been your coach, and now you're his boss. And that's a lot there. And Steve Ott, round of applause for our associate coach, Steve Ott. Steve, when you think about all those angles, competed against them, played with them, coached them, you know, what's a common thread, something consistent about what you've seen in every single angle?
Wow, it's a great question. First of all, congrats to Al, Chaser, I love you, Jax as well, and getting after Steener. If you look at those two pictures up there and you stare at their eyes, the competitiveness that speaks, the character in those eyes, playing against those guys, ultra competitive, you knew what you were in for every single night. Then becoming their teammates, the support, the people they are, that's special. They care about you off the ice, they care about you on the ice, constantly asking about your families, all those little details. That's not even hockey. And then when you coach them, it's a whole different thing. My first year as a rookie coach, and it's emotional because I love the guy. Yeah, why? Because I knew I didn't have to worry about him. It was consistency. It was the most complete player that you could ask for. It was work ethic on and off the ice. Everything was handled. You didn't even have to worry about it. And that's just the true gentlemen they are. I love them both, those two guys especially. Hell of a teammates, and I'm so proud of them, how they turned out as well.
Thanks. Thank you, Steve. Woo! I'm getting a little money. This guy knows who his boss is, by the way.
Well, Otter and Minnie, who's sitting, Brendan Morrow, who's sitting, I can't remember where you were sitting, but they used to be so hard on me when we played against Dallas. And then Otter, I was sure was trying to end my career. And then one night he caught me with an elbow and put me out for about 3 months. But I came back, and then a few years later, he came back as my assistant coach, and surely I started dropping lower and lower in the lineup. And then I was out.
Hey, let's have some fun with some video here. You know, we had Barrett scoring a couple of big playoff goals, and oh man, did you score a couple as well? And the one, of course, there was the shorthanded goal, and I think we have a little. I don't know if we have this one. This is the one playoff goal. This one gets the Blackhawks in triple overtime.
Oh, yeah. I've heard about that pass for a lot of times from Otter.
How about that pass? It was through his legs.
Yeah, but I was screaming. No, that was a great pass. That was a great
Otter
goal.
just lost it. He was
Fun
stick handling.
The fun, I think, yeah, that year, I think we went back-to-back years where I scored the winner in game 1 and Jack scored the winner in game 2. So the next night, I believe, was the one you showed about with Jack's, right?
It was. It was. Now the other one, we don't have the video of this, but it speaks to who you are. But the overtime goal against the LA Kings, the shorthanded goal. Now, you've talked about the training and stuff that you did to be able to extend a shift, to know that in a certain moment, I know I'm going to have more than some guy left on the ice. Walk us through that and then the role that played, that scenario in your mind played in that goal.
Well, I was training back home in summers, and the Steens would train with me. They were from the same little town that I was living in, and they ran this specific bike ride that I ran too. But the one day, the two of them were competing against each other, and I walked over and looked at their scores, their RPMs, like how fast they were trekking on this, and there was heavy weights on there, and I realized I wasn't even close. But my coaches are throwing me over the boards against these guys every time we play Vancouver. So I dialed in my training, and around that time I felt pretty confident in my endurance and strength, and then that game went into OT, and I remember that play because I didn't start the PK, and I think Sobey or someone changed for me, and the other group, the PP had been on the ice for 30 or 40 seconds, so when the puck went down, it was like I knew I was fresh, so I'll go take a swing at it, and knowing that I'll be able to get back in time, and it just fortunate it hit my stick. It couldn't have bounced out any more perfectly, and it was a very enjoyable goal. It was. I remember that noise in that building went from like 0 to 100. It was a lot of adrenaline, for sure.
When you think about the Stanley Cup championship, let's talk about the parade, the celebration at Obi Clark's. Did it live up to every ounce of expectation leading up to that moment, and what do you remember about that day?
Yeah, it was incredible, obviously. It didn't really sink in. I think the first time, we scored our third goal, and we started getting a little bit too excited, I felt like, on the bench. I didn't want us to, so I was trying to stay as focused as I didn't want this to turn into a game again when it was where it was, and didn't really relax. And then I remember there was a moment with like 7 seconds left. The puck came around the rim and squirted out in the neutral zone. I peeked up, and there was 7 seconds left, and that was when it hit me. Then, holy shit, we did it. And then it was, obviously, these days were super special, getting to spend it with your teammates and coaches and everybody that's been along for the ride. The big moment was the parade and the stage. I would say the stage. You get to the end, and you meet so many people during this time, throughout your time in St. Louis, in the city, walking around, going to restaurants, and you hear how passionate they are about the team and everything, and then that one moment when you're standing there and everybody's together, and it just felt like we were so connected, and being able to be a part of something like that was truly, it really hit me up there. It got really emotional, and that's one moment I for sure will never ever forget, that feeling.
When you look back on that season to today, does it even really sink in just how big that really was for this city?
Yeah, it's, I don't know, you just enjoy it. Like it was such an incredible ride. I mean, you work so hard for so long, and you go through all these, like I shared some stories here with some of the guys. Like I could sit here for days and tell you about all the teammates I've played with and what they've done to contribute to everything that the St. Louis Blues is, and that's just my time in the jersey. But to be able to do something like this as a group is special.
As we wrap it up, and I'll pull frankly all three of you in, but especially you, Barrett and Alex. It was Al McInnes that was on the plane the other day, and I was just talking to him about the two of you, because preparing for an event when you have two guys that really want to talk about everybody else, to get you guys to talk about yourself is a unique challenge. But it actually speaks to really who you are. And Al said, he goes, you know, and when he was talking about you, Barrett, and then he says he's had these conversations with you, Alex, that if you're a St. Louis Blue, you can go through a goal-scoring drought, you can go through whatever, but if you just bring the effort every night, you can be a Blue for life. And when I asked Philip Broberg, who just signed a 6-year contract, what he knows about St. Louis now he didn't know before, Philip said the alumni and how big that is in St. Louis. Like all of a sudden, there's a click right there. As we wrap up this great ceremony here tonight with, like, as we mentioned, over 50 former Blues and current Blues in here, and then all these great Blues fans, as we close this up, what truly could you say it means to be a St. Louis Blue?
For me?
Yep. You're first.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's become when my father said to me after he was retired and I was growing up, he said, when I look at the logo now, it's different. It's like it represents all those things, all the memories, all the people, all the like the work that was put in, everything that you did. And it's interesting because now, and I'm not just saying this because he said it to me, but now that's what I see. Like when I see the logo now, all that stuff comes back. And to me, it's first of all, I think it's one of the best logos in sports. I mean, I think it's unreal. But to me, it means, you know, everything from the city where my kids are being raised to what we've been able to accomplish as an organization from the start to where we are now.
Yeah, the same thing. You know, when the game's gone, you know, they could take the game away from you, or the game, you just lose it. But, you know, the friendships, the brotherhood, the teammates that you have, that carries on for the rest of your life. It doesn't matter if you played one game together, you played against each other, but, you know, and that's the greatest thing about our alumni, that, you know, that Bruce Affleck, you know, how Bobby did, Chaser's a huge part of it, and all the guys. We have a place that we can go. We have a support staff, a support group that, you know, when we're in trouble, we call them, or, you know, you just want to have a beer. There's so many guys that will pick up the phone. And, you know, that's the biggest thing about the game, is they give you that, you know, the friendships and the family that will carry on forever.
Well, first off, congratulations to both of you. Thank you very much. Joe, great job. Thank you for being a part of this tonight. Chaser, we love you, brother. Congratulations. You are a true Blue. And the city of St. Louis is lucky that one day you became a resident of the city and part of the St. Louis Blues. And to the Arbour family, want to thank you all for being here tonight as well and sharing some stories with your dad. It's been a special night. What I'd like to do is have all of the current Hall of Famers please come up to the stage for a final photo. For those tuning in on Matrix Midwest and our Blues YouTube channel, thank you for making us a part of your night. And one, to guess 3 of the greatest words ever, let's go Blues.